When you talk about a character who embodies temerity, enduring affability, and altruism, not many exemplify these qualities as much as Krillin, arguably the most skilled martial arts expert on Earth, as well as the most powerful human being to ever exist. It's somewhat of a baffling occurrence that Krillin has the reputation of being one of, if not the weakest character in the Dragon Ball universe. But how exactly did we get to this point? Is this designation due to Krillin's own doing? Is it unjustified? Or is the answer a hybrid of both possibilities? Let's find out. In age 741, Krillin began his martial arts journey at 4 years old, when he was somewhat conscripted at the Orin Temple, located in the East City region's bamboo forest. During his 8-year tenure, his growth rate did not really showcase his potential, as he was often victimized and bullied. Once he became a teenager, he resolved to leave the monastery to join Roshi's turtle school. Until present, this proves to be the most impactful decision he ever undertook in his martial arts journey, as he experienced a massive growth spurt which saw him ascend from being unimpressive to being on world martial arts competition level, where he greatly exceeded seniors at the Orin Temple. As his training progressed alongside a certain Saiyan prodigy, he developed a rivalry with his fellow students, which soon improved to a deep and enduring friendship. Throughout his teenage years, Krillin embarks on many adventures with his close friend and competes in many tournaments, pitting his skills against the best fighters in the world, most of the time regularly and easily reaching the finals, often against opponents with more experience and larger, more powerful physiques, solidifying himself as an elite combatant. Years pass and Krillin develops into a disciplined and virtuoso martial artist. Once we hit the Z era, vastly powerful warriors begin attacking the Earth, which exponentially exceeded anything the Z fighters had ever had to contend with before. This marks the stage where we see Krillin's potential hit a ceiling. However, through training and a touch of providence, he still manages to become even stronger. Although his strength is largely overshadowed by his peers, and he is often no match against the foes he faces, he continues to fight alongside his comrades and offers what little help he can when the Earth periodically comes under threat. But could things have transpired differently for this once promising warrior? Are there things that he and others around him could have done to allow his fighting abilities to match his fighting spirit? Let us take a deeper look into this. To truly appreciate Krillin's potential, we need to measure him according to his physiology and feats. The misconceptions regarding his prowess stem from when we compare him to a standard that is not physically possible for him to reach. When the criteria of measurement is skewed in this fashion, this wrongfully yet understandably takes credit away from Krillin. First of all, we need to remind ourselves that Krillin is human. The fact that he is able to fly, manifest energy projectiles, move at blistering speeds, possess lightning-fast reflexes, and the strength to effortlessly crush metal and rock with his bare hands is nothing short of remarkable. If we put Krillin into any other fictional universe besides the Dragon Ball Z universe, he is pretty much omnipotent. A simple Google search of the term Krillin Solo will hammer this point home to great effect. But let's try to keep things grounded in the rules of where he comes from, the Dragon Ball series. The next thing we need to understand is that Krillin's role in the series is largely to give audiences a relatable character. In this way, story segments have more depth and weight in Dragon Ball Z. Most notably, he complements Goku's character. Because of this, and a few other factors, the argument can be made that there would feasibly be no Goku as we know him were it not for Krillin. In the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament, he faces off against Goku. In this bout, and in some instances before, we are introduced to Krillin's most distinguished idiosyncrasy, utilizing misdirection. In contemporary combat sport and martial arts, a similar thought process can be observed, and it is referred to as conditioning. This is one of the most effective strategies one can employ when facing high-level competition in any real-life setting. As such, the fact that Krillin develops this type of thought process at such a young age speaks to his high level of fighting acumen. Adopting this method of attack is one of the most cunning ways Krillin actually gets around his power plateau, as he lacks the brute strength and durability of the majority of opponents he faces. He leans on combining the techniques he develops to stun, incapacitate, and mislead foes before dealing powerful attacks that often have the propensity to be fight-ending blows. Fighting in this manner and having a modicum of success in most situations as well proves to us that Krillin is a strategist at heart. He is at his best when he displays ingenuity to adapt to situations. This leads us down three possible paths where we could easily see Krillin rejoin the ranks of the elite. For starters, let's look back at Krillin's strength progression. In his younger years, his potential soared to heights that exceeded his age. This continued until we see him reach his 20s and 30s. This is the usual regular peak of actual human ability in real life, and we refer to this phenomenon as someone being in their prime. Prime Krillin has a healthy attitude towards training and sharpening his skills. Where he started to run into issues is, as we alluded to before, he began getting into bouts with alien beings. A case can even be made that this occurrence was much sooner, when Demon King Piccolo entered the fray. Where people really started to pull away from Krillin was when transformations were introduced as a staple. These often acted as ways for beings to exceed their base form attributes at exponential amounts. This also allows us to safely assume that Krillin would most likely be able to compete with enemies much more than we are accustomed to seeing if transformations did not exist. Transformations are likely one of the root causes that also introduced self-doubt to Krillin's psyche. If Krillin is able to tank blows from a Cell Jr., for instance, and we know that Cell Juniors, despite their diminutive disposition, possess the same power as Perfect Cell, then it stands to reason that Krillin would have been able to compete with the base form Cell. But alas, the series' post-Saiyan saga was practically built around transformations. So this is not really a concession we can make to accommodate Krillin without severely impacting the rest of the cast. So what other options are there for Krillin? The answers are closer to Krillin than one might think. When he was younger, Krillin had no issues training alongside his best friend Goku. As a result, we saw the two of them learn a lot of the same techniques as each other. Though both reached varying levels of proficiency, it would have been nice to see Goku share some of the later techniques he learned on his travels with his best friend. In particular, I feel as though Krillin would have been well suited to learning the instant transmission and maybe even the Kaioken technique. The more one thinks about this, the less of an excuse there is for Krillin not to have picked up this ability. He regularly trains with Goku, and he trained with King Kai. Those are two opportunities in which this knowledge could have been granted to him. As one of the Earth's most readily available defenders, I feel Krillin needed this kind of upgrade the most, especially seeing as it is a technique that doesn't really put him at the levels of the major characters, and at least would have allowed him the opportunity to hold his own a bit more. Though this seems to be the most logical and plausible way for Krillin to be more viable, it is actually the most unrealistic, as Goku did not even impart this kind of knowledge to his own sons, so the likelihood of him doing so for a close friend is even less of a possibility. Still, it's a viable path, and the idea of Krillin training closely with Goku was employed canonically before, so it would be interesting to have seen them re-implement this option for him in the story. Of course, we cannot neglect the only real conspicuous power-up Krillin ever really received on planet Namek, when he had his potential unlocked by Elder Guru. This saw Krillin receive his highest single power upgrade to date. It's not known whether there is a limit to how many times this kind of technique can be employed, as we saw Gohan receive the same buff as well as a similar one to achieve his mystic form. It would have been interesting to see Krillin receive a second buff in the same way, though admittedly the idea of a mystic Krillin would have probably taken away too much emphasis from the main characters at that time. Next, we know that Krillin is also close friends with Bulma. What if Krillin, being the master strategist we know him to be, approached Bulma and commissioned her to construct some form of exosuit for him to use? Perhaps a form of battle armor that enhanced his durability and strength. This would allow Krillin to be more viable in combat, allowing him to use his skills and experience to full effect, while removing his self-doubt in his capabilities due to his physical limitations. He is also married to an android. Android 18 was once formerly known as Lazuli. Looking at her physical disposition, she does not really represent a typical martial artist, and was most likely just a regular student that possibly attended Orange Star School, before being abducted and made into a cyborg. Despite this, 18 still retains a large amount of her human physiology, but the upgrade to being an android has seen her strength increase to the same level of that of a Super Saiyan. We know that not all androids are built equally, so it's likely that either their physical attributes prior to their transition have some bearing on their power level after the conversion, or it's likely that the level to which they ascend can be determined by the creator, as was the case with Dr. Giroux's creations. Regardless, if cybernetic enhancement can provide this much of a power buff to an unlikely physical specimen such as 18, imagine what this kind of augmentation could do for a highly skilled warrior class human at the peak of their natural ability, such as Krillin. We have seen the likes of Frieza undergo a similar transformation in the past, and we know that Capsule Corporation now possesses the blueprints for android design after quite literally reverse engineering Android 18 to remove a self-destruct device located in his body. And we know the heroes are always looking for ways to even the playing field against new foes that continually attack the Earth. So why not put these blueprints to good use? At the very least, this would put Krillin on equal footing with Android 18 and 17, which is to say, the same level as the classic Super Saiyan form. Yet again, a form that quickly became redundant shortly after it was introduced, as well as affording him the ability to have limitless ki blast energy and having an undetectable power signature, which could prove quite useful in evading stronger foes. This makes Krillin a lot more formidable as a Z-warrior, without overpowering him to the point of him outshining any of the main cast. Sadly, it's likely none of these avenues will ever be explored, as it seems Krillin was never really meant to be anything more than comic relief. Still, even the greatest fighters to ever live are not able to do so forever. And there are no human fighters greater in the Dragon Ball universe than Krillin. Out of all the Z fighters, he arguably displays more courage than anyone else. Despite being outmatched most of the time, he has faced almost every single main villain in pretty much every form they ever had. He has taken more beatings and was willing to lose his life for his friends more than anyone else has ever done. For a Z-warrior, that doesn't sound too impressive, but then you realize that he has sacrificed himself for his friends a total of 5 times. After all is said and done, Krillin truly is a man whose body has reached its limit, but his heart never will.